Welcome to the Kickstarter Weekly, everybody. This is Think Outside the Board, and this is our weekly video looking at the crowdfunding campaigns that are funding in the coming week. This week, I'm actually getting married on June 17th. So this is going to be a double video. It's going to cover 2 weeks. It's going to cover the games that are completing their funding between June 13th and the 26th. Now, I only have one game that I've played since last week. I've just been busy with wedding preparations. And the other thing is, even though this is designed to be a double video, I'm only covering 4 campaigns. There are only 4 campaigns that are funding in the next 2 weeks that I think are good enough for me to recommend on to you. So it's going to be a shorter video, and it's going to function as a video for a 2-week period. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for your support. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. And before we get to those 4 campaigns that are going to be completing their funding over the next 2 weeks, let's talk about the game that I actually played this period. Now, if you've been following my videos, you know that I've been enjoying Bonfire quite a bit. It's now become my favorite Stefan Feld game. I tried to teach it to my fiancée, Kristen. Well, I did teach it to my fiancée, Kristen, and she didn't enjoy the game at all. So we stopped partway through. Now, Kristen and I play a whole bunch of kinds of games, lighter to heavier games. She definitely prefers cooperative games, so we tend to play those. And I've always known that she doesn't like a lot of competition or a lot of take that. What I'm also starting to discover now, although she likes some heavy games, generally I don't think those are games that she usually enjoys. So in the future on this channel, the games that I'm playing with her, and once I start to stream, the games that I'll be streaming with her will probably be more cooperative games and the games that are on the medium lighter side. Cape May is a game that I'm really excited to teach her. And it's a lighter game. I put it in the medium light range. But from what I've heard, it has a lot of really good choices. So we'll probably be focusing together, when I play games with her, more on those medium light strategy games that still have really good choices and solid strategy. And then when I'm playing the heavier games that are the games that I enjoy the most, I'll be playing those more with other friends of mine who also really enjoy those kinds of games. So our 2-player game of Bonfire was scrapped, and later on that day, or maybe the next day, I instead played a solo game of Bonfire since I still had the game on the table. And I didn't love it. And I think this is my problem with many solo modes in multiplayer games, in Euro games. I tend to enjoy those games when they give you the same experience that the multiplayer games are. In other words, when they randomize things and you're more or less playing against maybe an AI player that's simulating another player, because then you're getting a similar experience to playing the game multiplayer. Although Bonfire does have a sort of AI character, there are cards that are used with this AI character, and Bonfire is a complex game with a lot of resources, a lot of action tiles, all of these things. So in the solo mode, they haven't duplicated all of that. There's a lot of things that a player does that the AI player in Bonfire will not do. And designing it more around that, I think, so that the AI player doesn't become just really, really cumbersome to control with a lot of bookkeeping. They've really streamlined that AI character down, which consequently means that it no longer plays like a player. Even though it is taking some actions, the way that it's determined with cards and the system by which the AI player does things, it's not like Bonfire the game. It's its own little system, which can be predicted to some degree. And this is getting into the area of things that I don't like in solo player games, where because of the design of the way that they're doing things, whether or not it includes an AI player, usually it doesn't, but even if it does, if it's designed in such a way that it becomes its own puzzle, where you're essentially playing the AI player's, I won't say a decision-making process, because the AI player isn't actually thinking or making decisions. It cannot do that. It's an automated system. But there is a way that it determines its actions. In this case, there are a number of cards. So you know what those cards are. Those cards are just going to come out over and over. And there are, I think, 8 cards. So as you see the cards, once you've played the game a few times, you know what those cards are. You even have a list of them because you need to interpret their actions. So you'll know what's coming. You'll know what the AI player is going to do, both in terms of specific actions and in its kind of longer strategy, or what replaces a strategy. Consequently, you're no longer playing Bonfire as a game, as you would if you were playing with other players. You're no longer pursuing your strategies or doing the things that you want to do. You are very much playing a game where you're trying to control that AI player and do things that really limit the AI player more than they help yourself. So it becomes a very, very different experience. You're kind of playing a puzzle of fighting an automated system or battling this automated system. And the decisions that you make doing that are much different than the decisions that you make when you're playing Bonfire. I don't enjoy the solo game in Bonfire as much. I don't enjoy the decisions that you have to make while countering that AI player system as the decisions that you have when you're playing Bonfire with other people. And I've noticed this in a lot of other games. I think the games that I like the most are games where they automate an AI player, not in the same way that they do in Bonfire, and they do a better job in simulating that AI player taking actions that are comparative to a player. I find the solo modes in Vital Lacerda games, a few of which have recently been worked on by David Turksey. I really like those. I really like Turksey's solo designs. I really like, in general, the designs in Lacerda games. Sometimes they've been the same. So it's an interesting dilemma, I think. I don't hate solo Bonfire. Potentially I could play it again, although usually for the level that I liked it, I would only play it if someone else wanted to play it. And in a solo game, there's no one else to play it with. So for me, if it comes to me sitting down and playing a solo game, I'm probably going to choose a game other than Bonfire. I'll probably choose a game where I like the solo system more. So it's not a terrible system. It's playable. It gives you some feeling of the game. Although I don't know how informative it is to play it as, if you're getting together and you're going to be playing later with friends. I don't know how informative it is for you to play a solo game and then think that you'll take that experience into the multiplayer game later, because it is different enough that I don't think you'll be doing all of the same things or kind of developing the same vocabulary that you would use in a multiplayer game. And in some ways, it may lead you towards certain pathways or walking down certain strategies that will not serve you in a multiplayer game. I think if you play multiplayer a lot and you want to brush up on some of the mechanics by playing solo, that may serve you to some degree, but I would not use solo Bonfire as a springboard, teaching method into multiplayer Bonfire. Just for those of you out there maybe who have the game and are thinking of playing it and thought that this would help, for me, the answer is no. So I still like Bonfire a lot. I still give the game overall a 9.0. I just will not be playing the solo game, I think. And it's not that I hate it. It's just that there are better solo experiences out there. And if I'm playing a solo game, the only person involved is me, so I might as well grab a game that excels. Also, I don't play a lot of solo games. I think when I do, I tend to play games that were designed as solo games that I've vetted, that I know really play well as solo games, or I prefer video games as a solo gamer more. Since there's not that player interaction on the table in a solo board game, I think I'd rather play a video game where the game itself is more interactive. But that's just my personal preference. So didn't love Bonfire solo, didn't hate it, and I'm not going to give the solo mode by itself a score, but I will say that my overall score for the game continues to be a 9.0, and I look forward to playing it again in a multiplayer count. Okay, now let's take a look at the 4 campaigns that I'd like to bring to your attention that will be completing their funding over the next 2 weeks. 3 of these are on Kickstarter, 1 of them is on Gamefound. They're all gems in my mind, and usually in these videos I talk about what I backed from the previous video. I didn't back anything from the previous video, so there's not going to be a section in this video today about what I backed last week. However, I will give you a hint for next time and say that of these 4 games, I'm backing 3 of them. And the only reason that I'm not backing the 4th, it's by a designer and a publisher that I've backed before who I like a lot. It's just that this game in particular doesn't really speak to me, and it has mechanics that I think are not really my favorite. So I'm probably backing 3 of these 4 that I'm covering today, and the game that I'm not is still by a designer and a publisher that I really, really like. I'm just getting to that point in my collection where I'm having to refine more and more what I'm bringing in, and the things that don't hit more and more notes are not even making it in the door. It's just what happens when your collection becomes huge, as mine has become. So the first of these campaigns that we're talking about today in this video is called Arcs. This had a minimum required funding goal of $100,000. They're currently sitting at $1.3 million, which is about 13 times that minimum required funding goal. Now, Arcs is going to complete its funding on Tuesday, June 14th. And this is something to keep in mind because 2 of the campaigns that I'm talking about today are funding this week. So when I talk to you about the minimum required funding goal and the funding amounts, it should be a lot more for the first 2 games because the second pair of games are not funding until next week, so they still have another week of funding to go. So their totals may not be as high as these first 2 games. Anyway, Arcs is going to complete its funding on Tuesday, June 14th. It's a game for 3 to 4 players, typically plays in about 60 to 90 minutes. Complexity on the game is medium heavy, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium low. Now, Leader Games describes Arcs as a fast-playing space opera whose action unfolds in the final days of a decaying empire. It's a card-driven campaign game that uses action points and trick-taking. And so far from what I've seen of it, it does feel to me like this is somewhat inspired by Oath. Both what they did in that game, how they made that game work, what they learned from it, kind of changing things around and putting it in a different setting. It's not going to be the same game. It's not a retheme. There's plenty that's different about it, but it does seem like it has taken some cues from Oath and evolved a different game system from that starting point with a different theme, yet all of the same things that make Leader Games games so good and so unique to what they are. A lot of that is designer Cole Worley and artist Kyle Farron. So Cole Worley has previously designed Oath, Chronicles of Empire and Exile, Pax Pamir 2nd Edition, and Root. And artist Kyle Farron has previously done art on Fort, Oath, Root, and Vast the Crystal Caverns. And similarly, publisher Leader Games has previously published Fort, Oath, Root, and Vast. Now, this is not an overly complicated campaign in terms of pledge offerings and add-ons. In fact, you've got 3 different pledge levels, and what is in those pledge levels is specific enough that there is nothing being offered as add-ons. So you just need to figure out what you want and pledge at that pledge level. The first of those pledge levels is $60. It's called Arcs, and that will get you the base game and the More to Explore pack, which is kind of like a mini expansion. If you want the campaign stuff, then you need to pledge at the $100 level. That's called Arcs plus Campaign, and that will add to your pledge the Blighted Reach campaign. If you want the miniatures, then you go 1 pledge level higher. That's $150. It's called the All-In Pledge, and that's going to get you everything that I've mentioned previously. So the base game, the More to Explore mini expansion pack, the campaign expansion, and then finally the miniatures pack. So if you want the miniatures, $150 all in, you'll be getting that along with the campaign and the game itself. Shipping in the continental US has been estimated at $24, and Leader Games is planning on delivering Arcs in December of 2023. So that is a year and a half out. This is not going to be delivered this holiday season. It's 18 months away, 2023. From there, we go to the Castles of Burgundy Special Edition. This campaign is over on Gamefound. They had a minimum required funding goal for this campaign of $54,000. They're currently at $2.5 million, which is 47 times that minimum required funding goal. Now, Castles of Burgundy Special Edition is also going to complete its funding on Tuesday, June 14th. Castles plays 1 to 4 players, in about 70 to 120 minutes. It's classed as a medium-heavy game, but it's on the lighter side of that, so it's just into the medium-heavy range from medium-light, in my opinion. And we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at low. Now, if you've never played Castles of Burgundy before, because it's been around for a while, there's been a few different editions. The first edition that came out just didn't really have a high component quality. It didn't really look that good. Amazing game, in my opinion, but didn't look as pretty as maybe it could be. They did a collected version a couple years ago. I thought I would be buying that version and replacing my original game, but it was ugly. It was so ugly, just really bad design colors. It makes my head hurt and my eyes circle around just to look at the art on that collected edition. And so now we have this, and Awaken Realms, who does a lot of big miniatures games, have come in and they're co-producing as a publisher along with Ravensburger, and this is going to be a much prettier game that brings in all the expansions from the past. There have been a lot of kind of smaller mini expansions. A lot of them have been harder to find. They've been issued at conventions and things like that, so they've been harder for the average player to find and then add them to the original game. They're all going to be included in this version, and then of course, because it's Awaken Realms, there are going to be miniatures involved if you want those, and if you want it, there will be Sundrop available for the miniatures, which is kind of a wash that you can put on miniatures that puts a little shading into it. So if you're the kind of person who doesn't paint, can't paint, doesn't have the time to paint, at least your miniatures look a little bit better than just a plain hunk of plastic. There's some shading on it. It's a step up from just a bare miniature. Castles of Burgundy itself, mechanics-wise, is essentially a worker placement game with dice workers. Players are bidding essentially for these dice workers, and then they'll use them to take actions. And they're trying to accumulate a bunch of different things. It's set collection, really, depending on what's available, what they already have, and how they want to try to assemble sets of various types of tiles to score points at the end of the game. Now, Castles of Burgundy is designed by Stefan Feld. Interesting, because I've just been talking about Bonfire, which has now become my favorite Stefan Feld game. However, it's not at the top of his ratings on Board Game Geek. That would be the 5 games Bora Bora, Bruges, the original Castles of Burgundy, Notre Dame, and Trajan. So those are his 5 highest rated games on Board Game Geek. I'd love to talk to you about the artists, but they haven't been disclosed anywhere. So they're not in the Board Game Geek listing for this new special edition. They're not listed anywhere on the Gamefound page. So they're not credited as of yet. We don't know who the artists are, which is unfortunate. I think it's always a good thing to give full credit to your artists. This is a co-production between 2 publishers, Ravensburger, who published the original, and they're best known for games like Calico, the original Castles of Burgundy, Horrified, Puerto Rico, and The Quest for El Dorado. And then the other publisher here is Awaken Realms, who are best known for games such as Etherfields, Lords of Hellas, Nemesis, Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon, and This War of Mine, the board game. So these 2 publishers coming together is a really unique situation and an interesting collaboration. And it looks poised to put out an amazing version of this game that is pricey, admittedly. But if you're not considering things like group pledges or retailer pledges, there are really 4 different pledge levels that we want to look at for the average backer. The first of these is $91. It's called Classic Pledge, no minis. And if you don't want all the bells and whistles, if you just want a really good looking version of Castles of Burgundy that's going to include all of those hard to find expansions with reworked art, this is your pledge level. It's a base pledge level. It doesn't have all the extras, but for this game, for what a lot of people want, this is the pledge level they want. It doesn't have all that fluff on it. It has the base game, and it has all the stretch goals, which will include all previously published 10 mini expansions. Now, if you want to pay a little bit more, going from $91 to $102 for the special edition, which is also the gameplay all in, you're going to add into that pledge 10 castle miniatures. So the castles are tiles in this game that you place on your board. Usually you don't have very many of them on any one player board, but you will get, I think it's 16 castle miniatures to be used in the game as those tiles. Now, if you want to increase that pledge level and get all of the bells and whistles except for a lot of miniatures, then you want this third pledge level. It's $153. It's called Royal Pledge. It includes Sundrop on those castle miniatures. So they'll be washed, they'll have some details on them. You'll also be getting a big playmat for the main part of the board, and the tiles in the game will be upgraded from the normal cardboard tiles to acrylic tiles. Now, if you really want to go all out and get everything to bling out this game and acquire the most produced version possible, then you want the version that is $287. It's called the Majestic Pledge Sundrop. It's going to get you everything that we've talked about already. However, it's going to add in 150 more miniature tiles. It's going to give you miniatures for all the tiles in the game, and they're all going to be washed with Sundrop. So they're all going to have shading on them. It's going to make the game look like, as you're playing it, like the Terraforming Mars version that had all of these big, chunky, 3D printed tiles. It's going to be a similar look to it. That's not something that everyone needs to spend money on, and it's not something that everyone needs to have, so it's only for the collector who wants the most blinged up version of the game. Even that $91 Classic Pledge is going to have a lot of stuff and look really good compared to previous versions of the game. But if you want the version that has miniatures for all the tiles with Sundrop on them, just crazy production value, this is the pledge that you want. Now, they've added some of these items in as add-ons, so if you only want some of them and not in the way that they've packaged them, you can get a cheaper pledge level and then add some of these things as add-ons. So that big oversized neoprene playmat that's going to function as the main part of the board, that is $19 as an add-on. If you want those upgraded hex tiles, the acrylic ones, that is $35 as an add-on. And if you want the miniature pack that has all of the miniatures that come in the highest pledge version of the game, you can add on that 3D terrain pack for $102 as an add-on. Shipping in the continental US has been estimated at $22, $27, and $34. There's 4 pledge levels, there's 3 shipping levels. The difference here is that the first 2 pledge levels, which are only $10 apart, the estimate for both of those is the $22 shipping price. So the highest 2 shipping pledge levels are for the highest 2 pledges, and the lowest 2 pledges share that $22 continental US estimate. And then finally, Ravensburger and Awakened Realms are currently planning on delivering Castles of Burgundy Special Edition in May of 2023. From there, we go back to Kickstarter for a campaign for Keydom's Dragons. This one had a minimum required funding goal of $13,000. They're currently at about $28,000, which is about 2 times that minimum required funding goal. But keep in mind, this game and the next one are still a week and a half out until they finish their campaigns. So normally I'd be talking about these 2 campaigns in another week once they've had another full week of funding. So Keydom's Dragons is going to complete its funding on Monday, June 20th. This is a game for 1 to 6 players, typically plays in about 1 to 2 hours. Complexity on the game is medium light, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium low. So Keydom's Dragons is an auction bidding and worker placement game. And generally what's going to happen is that every turn, every round, players are going to be bidding to take certain actions, hidden bidding. And then when it's revealed, the winners of each of those bids will be able to then go and take that worker placement action in that category where they won the bid. So they'll be bidding on several different actions in a round. I think it's about 5. And the winners of each of those bids are the ones who will be able to actually take those actions. This game was originally published way back in 1998 under the title Keydom. I believe it was a very limited print run at Essen, like 200, maybe 300 copies, and that was it. The license was then picked up and the game was rethemed, and it was published a couple years later in 2000 under the name Aladdin's Dragons. And it has not been republished since then. The game has been out of print for a while, and it is now being sort of rethemed back into the Key universe under the name Keydom's Dragons. It's also got new art, little tweaking of the design as well. So Keydom's Dragons is designed by Richard Breeze, who does all the games in the Key universe, the most famous of which are Keyflower and Cathedral, and he also designed a game called The Reef Encounter that doesn't really take place in that universe or have the Key name, but those are the 3 games of his that are the highest rated on BoardGameGeek. The art for this newest version of the game is by Vicky Dalton. She's worked on Carcassonne, Amazonas, Keyflow, and Keeper. And the game is being published by R&D Games. That is Richard Breeze's company, so they publish all of his games. And just as with his design credits, their most well-rated games are Keyflower, Cathedral, and Reef Encounter. Super simple campaign on this one, no add-ons, 1 pledge price. You're either getting this game or you're not. It's $57 to pledge Keydom's Dragons. Boom, you're done. In the continental US, shipping is being estimated at $17, and R&D Games is currently planning on delivering Keydom's Dragons in December of 2022. That's the first game that we've talked about that's actually being delivered this year in 2022. So Arcs is a year later, Keydom's Dragons this December. That brings us to the final campaign of this video. It's for Aeon's End, Past and Future. This had a minimum required funding goal of $200,000. They're currently at $202,000, which is about 10 times that minimum required funding goal. However, keep in mind that like Keydom's Dragons, this game is not going to fund for another week and a half plus. So it has more time to get funding, and normally I'd be talking about the multiplier on this one once it had another week of funding. So Aeon's End, Past and Future is going to complete its funding on Friday, June 24th. This is a game for 1 to 4 players that typically plays in about 60 minutes. Complexity on the game is medium heavy, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at low. Now, Aeon's End is one of my favorite 2 deck builders, the other one being Thunderstone Quest, and both of these games are more pure deck builders, meaning that the deck building is the front and center primary focus. Thunderstone Quest particularly has a few other mechanics in the game, but those mechanics still serve the deck building. This makes it different from things like Lost Ruins of Arnak or Dune Imperium, where those games do have deck building, but they have a lot of other stuff going on too. Both of those games, it's worker placement and tracks and other kinds of things. So the deck building is just a part of those games. But for games like Thunderstone Quest and for Aeon's End, the deck building is front and center. It's almost a pure deck builder. Although you get into Thunderstone Quest, there's a few other things as well. The other thing that I really like about Aeon's End is the take that it has on deck building. So there are certain cards, when you get them, they're spells that your caster is going to be using. But some of those spells, they can't use immediately. They need to assign them in certain places, and there are portals that they're represented by other cards. They'll turn those cards as things happen, and they'll need to eventually get those cards turned so that the card they've assigned to it can be activated, which creates a little mechanical system in addition to the deck building where you've got these spells that you want to get off and you're trying to plan how to tick them down to be able to use them. There's more going on, and it's more involving, and there's more strategy than just a straight deck builder where you're just immediately playing cards from your hand. This gives you more opportunity for strategy, but it also gives you more problems, more things that you kind of have to juggle as a player. For me, I like that because it keeps my brain busy. It gives me more things to think about. And the formula in Aeon's End in general has players playing these spellcasters, these characters. It's a fantasy themed game. They're trying to stop various monsters, including dragons and things, from attacking this nearby town. So you're always playing cooperatively, and you're fighting this big bad monster creature who's trying to decimate a village, a town of innocent villagers. And there have been 2 legacy versions to date as well, Aeon's End Legacy and Aeon's End Legacy Return to Gravehold, which have brought the legacy experience into Aeon's End. Personally, I think it's an amazing game either way, although I love legacy games, so I probably prefer those. But that's the game in a nutshell. Deck building, some of these kind of timed releases of spells. You've got Legacy and some of the iterations of the game, and it's just cooperative, pure deck building goodness. This latest expansion has 3 different designers. The first is Sydney Engelstein. She's previously worked on Aeon's End Outcasts, Space Cadets Dice Duel, and Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition. Nick Little has previously worked on Aeon's End Legacy, Aeon's End Outcasts, and Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition. And Kevin Riley is the designer who created Aeon's End and has essentially been there since the beginning. So as a designer, his highest rated games are a lot of the Aeon's End games. They include the original Aeon's End, Aeon's End Legacy, Aeon's End The New Age, Aeon's End Outcasts, and Aeon's End War Eternal. The art is by Gong Studios, who have previously worked on Aeon's End The New Age, Aeon's End War Eternal, Fields of Green, and Tiny Towns, as well as Justine Nortje, who has previously worked on Ripple Rush, Second Chance, and Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition. Finally, the game is being published by Indie Boards and Cards, who have previously published Aeon's End Legacy, Aeon's End War Eternal, The Resistance, and The Resistance Avalon. Now, there are a lot of pledge levels for this one. There are a lot of add-ons, but they all kind of follow a very similar formula, so it's not too confusing. In general, this is the 7th expansion, the 7th big expansion for Aeon's End. So you've got the first pledge level where you can just get this new wave if you have everything else, and then you've got 6 more pledge levels. Each of them adds on 1 more wave, which you can choose in the pledge manager. So those previous 6 waves are going to include the original Aeon's End The New Age, Aeon's End Outcasts, Aeon's End War Eternal, and then the 2 legacy versions, Aeon's End Legacy and Aeon's End Legacy Return to Gravehold. So that's what you'll be able to choose from in the pledge manager, depending on how many waves you're getting. So the first pledge level is $64. It's called Encased Fossil. It's going to get you Past and Future, which is the new big expansion, and Origins, which is the mini expansion that's going to pull together all the stretch goals. So generally, whenever they do a campaign for Aeon's End, you're going to have one big expansion that's kind of like the meat of the campaign, and then you're going to have all of the stretch goals put together into a smaller mini expansion. For $130, called Building Storm, you're going to get all of that new stuff plus an additional wave that you'll be able to choose in the pledge manager. For $195, the pledge level is called Tethered Smite. You'll get all of the new stuff plus 2 additional waves in the pledge manager. And you can see where this is going. So $260, it's called Amplified Calcite. That will get you all of the new stuff plus 3 waves. $325, the pledge level called Cavernous Maw will get you the new stuff plus 4 additional waves. $390, Consume Magic will get you the new stuff plus 5 additional waves. And $455, it's called Reflecting Current, will get you the new stuff and then all 6 of the additional waves. However, keep in mind, whenever you add on Legacy of Gravehold in any of those waves, it's going to be an additional $10. So there's a little more content for Legacy of Gravehold. So no matter when you pledge it, any of the, if you get 1 wave, if you get 6 waves, whatever wave you're getting, if you're putting Legacy of Gravehold in there as one of those additional waves, there will be an additional $10 added on. Okay, let's talk add-ons here. We'll do the easiest one first. So if you want the big neoprene area play mat, that's $25 as an add-on. If you want to get neoprene player mats for each player, you can get a pack of 2 for $15, or you can get a pack of 4 player mats for $25. From there, we go to accessory packs. Now, what these are, if you're just playing the game and you don't mind setting it up again every time, that's fine. You won't need accessory packs. But if you're playing with multiple players and they're maybe going to want to use different mages that have some of the same starting cards, or if you're wanting to keep all of the mages in that game, their base packs put together, they share some cards. So you may need extra cards if you're going to always want to have each mage kind of saved with all of its cards. You'll need an accessory pack so that way you can get enough base cards for all of the mages in that version of the game. That way you can just put it away, have that mage character saved, have their deck of cards collected in one place, and then whenever you pull out the game, you already have any character you want with a full set of cards already assembled. That's what the accessory packs are for. So for $20, this was the first accessory pack that came out. It's just called Accessory Pack. You're gonna get that pack, and that one relates to War Eternal. For $10, you can add on Accessory Pack 2, and that's the one that originally came with the New Age. You can also get Accessory Pack 3 for $10, and that is the pack that shipped with Outcasts. For $15, you can get Accessory Pack 4. That is the accessory pack that corresponds with Aeon's End Legacy of Gravehold. And finally for this one, so you may want to add this on, you get Accessory Pack 5 for a $15 add-on, and that's the accessory pack that goes along with this version of the game, past and future. So if you want to be able to play this game, if you like your characters, you want to put them away and not have to take their decks apart and reassemble them when you play different characters, you probably want to add on that Accessory Pack 5. You could also get the GTM promo pack that was originally available for the first Legacy game. That's $5 as an add-on, which is different from the Aeon's End Legacy promo pack, which also came with Legacy. So one of them was the GTM promo pack. One of them is called Aeon's End Legacy promo pack. They're both $5 as add-ons, but they are two different promo packs, and they both correspond with Aeon's End Legacy. Also for $5, you can get the retailer promo pack that was associated with Legacy. So that brings the total promo packs that relate to Legacy to 3. For $5, you can get card dividers that were originally offered through War Eternal. So that will help you divide your cards in the boxes. You'll have dividers. For $5, you can also add on the 12 card promo pack that originally went out with War Eternal. For $10, you can add on Aeon's End, the New Age promo pack, which came with the New Age. For $10, you can add on Aeon's End Outcasts promo pack, which originally was offered with Outcasts. And for $10, you can add on the Aeon's End Legacy of Gravehold promo pack, which originally was offered with the Legacy of Gravehold campaign. So you choose your pledge, you choose how many additional waves you want. Later in the pledge manager, you'll be able to pick out specifically which of those waves you want, and then depending on which waves you get, you may also want to add on some promo packs and or some accessory packs, and then there are a few other things you might want, like neoprene mats. Shipping for the continental US has been estimated at $20, $30, $40, $60, $70, and $80, and the way that works is it's essentially $10 more than your wave. So if you're getting one wave of stuff, just the new stuff, it's going to be $20. If you're getting the pledge level that has the new stuff plus one wave, then your shipping is going to be $30. So it's the number of waves that you're getting, thinking of the new stuff as its own wave. So you have 2 waves, $30, 3 waves, $40. All 7 waves, so the new stuff plus all previous 6 waves, 7 waves total, $80 on the estimated shipping. And then finally, Indie Boards and Cards is planning on delivering Aeon's End Past and Future, plus whatever previous Aeon stuff you have added to your shipment in January of 2023. So that really wraps the video. Thank you very much for joining. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know if any of these 4 campaigns are things that look especially good to you, that you're personally going to be backing. And then I will return in 2 weeks after I'm married with the next Kickstarter weekly video. I'm also working to complete my upstairs studio space and getting new equipment in and things. So soon in this channel, over the next few months, you're going to see some upgrades, both visually and in terms of the equipment that I'm using and what I'm able to do with it. And I also will be able to focus more on teach and review videos now that I'll have the equipment to do them all well. So those are all things to look forward to. I'll be back in a week and a half to 2 weeks with a new Kickstarter weekly video while I continue to make upgrades and work behind the scenes to put out some new and better content. Until then, have a great couple of weeks, play some great games, be excellent to each other, and I'll see you very soon. Take care.